Hey, Leah, how are you?
Good, you?
I'm very well, thanks. I'm buzzing after that last conversation. I don't know if you managed to get to see some of it, but
Yeah, so that was amazing. I was just like nodding. I was so excited about like the last like 5 minutes as well. It was like a nice like mic drop and that is really consistent with what I have to say too. So I think it's nice to see that we've got like a community of people that are very like-minded and can bring different perspectives. So yeah, that was honestly fascinating. Good job.
brilliant. Thank you very much. No. I do try and curate it the right way. So it's nice to get that kind of feedback, especially from somebody like yourself. So look, I'm really excited to get you on this show, Leah. But before we get into it, tell me about the human behind the exec. You know, what's your story, Leah, in a couple of minutes?
I absolutely love that question. I'll try and keep it to a couple of minutes because, as you know, we're all very layered, and I've got my own bias about myself. So, I mean, ideally, I'd get my like six closest, people and champions. I always say get six champions, in kind of different kind of subjects and different roles in your lives. We can talk about this eventually, but like with my own bias and my own like understanding of behavioral science, I think obviously I am again a daughter. I'm Lebanese. I actually just got my UK citizenship. So again, I'm a multi-layered person that travels a lot, as you know, speaks to different cultures, connects with different people. But I think deeply, I think the person that I am is deeply anchored in the work that I do. That's why I love what I do so much, being a behavioral scientist, because I'm inherently curious as a person. And I think I get with my own bias. If you were to ask anyone around me, what defines like Leah as a person, they'd say she's so curious. I mean, my mom used to buy me 1,000 Reasons Why books when I was younger because Google didn't really, exist or wasn't that kind of rich. So yeah, I'm an inherently a kind of curious person, very international, very like multi-layered, very open to different perspectives, cultures, and just someone that likes to connect with humans. So I think that it just goes back and segues back to the career I chose and the career in the industry I chose to develop. So I'd say yeah, very very global, very kind of curious and extremely busy usually, but in the right ways. My journey was I started in network agencies, within like the strategy teams, within the consumer insights teams. And then after that, I obviously developed a behavioral science consultancy and I went to build and found my own behavioral consultancy. And the reason Mindscope is, it's different. The reason is kind of differentiated is because I realized that there was a gap in the market in terms of discerning and understanding real behaviors in a dynamic way and in an agile way. Because my job and our job is to go out there, share things on stages, be within the industry because there's so much, but we can really filter this out with that scientific layer of, okay, what matters and what doesn't. What I want to do for the industry and for our clients is act as noise canceling headphones because people, again, they're lost within timelines, they're lost within DMs. There's so much confusion. Also, we are lost within our own marketing echo chambers. I'm seeing this increasingly. Marketers are judging other marketers' work instead of looking at what the audience really thinks. Look at that that kind of new like traction and that campaign with like Sydney Sweeney. So I think there's so much that the industry is like plugging in that adds to that noise. What we need to do as senior executives, as brands, is to reduce that noise because there's just so much noise online already. There are so many echo chambers. Your mission is to cut more valuably with your audiences. What behavioral science does, it gives you those high value audiences. It gives you the right strategy to reach them, and then it gives you how to action that. That's why you study that. It's not about more data; it's about quality data, and quality data means insight and foresight. So that's the huge difference. It's not about giving more. I literally had a call this morning where I told someone, great, they're offering you all of this, but they're just offering you data and information and data that you can't really translate. What's the point of doing this? The base is not really strong. You need more quality data, and often the less is more. Leave it with us to kind of look at that because I always say if you don't know the question, you don't know the answer. So let's define it. let's find a simple way to find our audiences. That's the data-led, that's insight and foresight-led. And with that, we can help you cut more valuably with those audiences and let the audience judge. So I'd say cut more valuably.
How do you see the work that you're doing helping brands understand which direction to go in?
No, I think, but again, people sometimes, I think people see things as like very binary. There's nothing is that binary. At the end of the day, like if you work in a certain industry. So again, a simple example about that. So there was like a B2B company that like reached out, and it was like a simple question. They were like, okay, like if we want to appeal to a certain sector, we need to be really bold, we need to do this, etc., etc. But they were trying to appeal to a financial sector, right? It's very bold. The definition of bold is very different in finance than in tech. Being bold in finance means trying to push those trust layers even more, trying to have a different tone of voice. So what that does, even this simple kind of nuance that I gave them unlocked an idea for them. But that simple nuance around defining what bold is and defining what the financial services industry in 2025 needs helped them. Because foresight is not necessarily about predicting the future. We talk more and more about like strategic foresight, and also having a crystal ball. No one really has a crystal ball in anything that we do in this world. No one can know what tomorrow holds. I mean, we're not going to go that deep, but no one has that. So what I think is fundamental for us to understand is foresight is all about trying to predict things the best ways. Now, the reason that foresight is booming and it's growing, one, for predictive technologies. You're able to understand more from the historic data that you have. There are new startups and tech companies that are able to simulate. I talked to one of them this morning. They literally like simulate a live conversation with a bio on Twitter, but it's a fake persona. It's like synthetic data to understand what they say. But because we have so many data points and so many links that we can pull together, we are even more kind of convinced and even more, if you will, the statistical significance is even stronger in what we can predict. It doesn't mean that we can predict everything. It just means that it's more robust. The ways we can predict things are more robust. Now, foresight exists because insight is not enough. It's great to have an insight, but the reason it's called foresight is because it has a dynamic layer to it. The dynamic layer means that if your client tomorrow wants to pivot, if something new happens, if a new startup comes to life, that's why I'm so plugged within the industry. You see me at obviously South by and Cannes and stuff. I'm also at a lot of technical and specialist niche events, and I speak there and predict the next generation of tech, etc. It's because we have to be agile. The past and the nature of agencies, and it's a big debate that we have, it's changing. We can't have that like structured, a traditional model where we're just like plugged in time, and this doesn't work anymore. And that's why the definition is changing towards foresight, because of the dynamic aspect, because of emerging technologies that also help us to predict things better, and because there's are more robust tools and a more robust like statistical significance to be able to predict the next step. And I'd say the last thing is, you said social media, right? Social media had a big drawback because, again, it disconnected people from each other. But what that also meant was we have billions of data points on social. So you've got billions of conversations, you've got discourse on X, you've got discourse on Reddit, on Quora. You've got conversations that you can anonymize. When you anonymize those conversations, you're able to understand behavioral profiles and some mainstream trends before they even happen. And some of our clients love that because you use a combination of human empathy and a combination of kind of the data science to predict the next shift. Not a trend, I'd say, not a trend, but a cultural shift. And that's priceless. So yeah, I'd say the center of this is emerging technologies at the end of the day that enable that foresight even more.
Brilliant. If you, I was wanting to talk about kind of any white papers you might have or anything like that, but one of our guests has actually asked, is there a book or a video or article that really helps people understand even the basics of behavioral science?
Oh yeah, so many, so many. You've got Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. He's the godfather of behavioral science.
What advice are you giving, and what advice can you give to our listeners about really understanding what sustainable growth means?
The first one is, you said we're in an attention economy. There's a recent stat I spoke about with the Queen Elizabeth II Center, where we found that the kind of distraction economy is costing the UK over 20 billion a year in productivity. Can you imagine? Because delegates are on their phones, some workers are not working. There's so much around us, so much that surrounds us. So now we need to fix the problem, not the symptoms. If you were to keep saying, hey, you know what, this is happening, great, here, look at me, put your phone in this box, this is not going to work. You need to create an emotional reward beyond this. You need to create the emotional reward beyond the phone. So I definitely recommend looking at ways to engage people by going back to who we are as humans, the experience layers that we really enjoy, and create sensory things that you can have through your phone. That's the first element. Second element is, I hear a lot, and I think, Mike, you hear so much about this. You know, a lot of people say that our attention deficit, our attention span, is decreasing, is decreasing. It's not decreasing. We ran this time and time again. It's not decreasing. So I don't really call it attention span per se. I call it filtering span. So essentially, we got much better at filtering out information, you know, especially Gen Z and Gen Alpha, because they're so used to processing a lot of information. That's why they're more brand loyal, by the way, as well, because they select what they want to look at straight away. So they filter out information, they know what to look at. We are not that adept, maybe our generations, because we were in the middle of all those changes. And my generation was actually in the middle of those changes, where we had to let go of like our disc pods for iPods for an iPhone. So again, we were still getting to the grasp of it, but Gen Z and Gen Alpha, for example, they got much better at filtering out information, and we are getting better over time at filtering out information. So attention spans have not decreased, but consider a filtering span that enables you to understand that actually your consumers know what they want to look at before they even like look at it. So reconsider your media plan based on that. Now, the third thing, and I think that's really important, because you said, obviously, like, do you have any advice to do less and to cut more valuably? We said that brands have ruined the place for that were your place for connecting with your family, your friends, connections, etc. Think about new platforms. Think about Snapchat. Snapchat is doing amazing, because Snapchat is a place for friends and family. Snapchat is where you speak to your best friend. You've got the Snap Map. Snapchat is social. It's the antidote and the opposite of social media right now, because it brought back the social to social media. So I think I'd recommend advertisers to also look at new platforms, to invest in Pinterest, Snapchat, go beyond, to get that attention and to cut valuably with different communities. So I'd say go in a different direction. Again, pivoting doesn't mean changing things. It means testing and learning things and making sure that you go to the pockets of attention that exists, but that you're not tapping into because you're following the trends or you're following the curve. And there are other opportunities. So make sure that you go out of the echo chambers within our industry and look at the platforms that are delivering for the audience. Snapchat is delivering for the audience. Pinterest is delivering for the audience. So make sure that you go to those platforms as well and evaluate how you can activate your brand within those platforms. Finally, fourth thing, I've got 4 laps, so I'll say fourth thing. The less is more. So because brands have surrounded social, they've surrounded our phones, they've surrounded our spaces, our stages, they've surrounded everything. Your mission as a brand is to make sure that you cut more valuably with your audience. And I said that first. I said that as the first point when we started speaking. So know your audience. I know it's cliche, but know your audience. Do that homework, because it'll save you, 1, it save you million, and 2, it will reduce the noise, because you'll end up doing less. You'll end up trying to stopping their kind of hyper communication and trying to connect with everyone, and you will connect with people and the cultural ecosystem and the audiences that expect you. So don't chase those audiences, attract them, and build an ecosystem that would really attract them. So I'd say those are kind of the 4 points that I'd recommend.
Great. Thank you. And then finally, have you got a quote you could share with us?
Yeah, so that's why I was saying the like earlier that what Beth said really resonated with me, because my quote, and the thing that my teams always remember that I say, is the only constant is change. And that's why I always remember when I go in with my clients or on stage and do things, because again, this is that you can't really control much. The only constant that we've got in life is change. So if you were to changes always happens, again, it happens like teenagers and rock and roll, like change has always happened. But again, it's not because we're talking about it more now and because it's accelerating at the moment that we have to be scared and worried. I think we need to remember that as humans, and that's kind of what I say as a behavioral scientist, we are used to change. We are adaptable. We've gone through a lot. So I think remembering that the only constant is change kind of reassure you to know that you can be agile. It's in our human nature. Take it from a behavioral scientist. You can change, you can evolve, you can adapt. So don't worry about things just being completely like shaken up and people saying that things are being destroyed left and right, because that's not really the case. If you are worried, just DM me on LinkedIn. I'll try to reassure you. But I think the only constant is change is what I'm like known to say. Yeah.
Perfect. Leah, fantastic. I'm so pleased we got to spend time together. You certainly need to catch up over the next couple of weeks. It's been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Mike. See you on our podcast as well.
There you go. There you go. See you later. Bye bye.